What if the darkest mind in the DC universe suddenly opened his eyes beneath alien stars and realized the rules of war, justice, and strategy had completely changed? What if Batman Gotham's silent guardian, the master tactician who could outthink gods, found himself standing on the bridge of a Federation starship, surrounded not by criminals and gargoyles, but by warp drives, Vulcan logic, and a galaxy that does not believe in fear? Would he adapt? Or would the final frontier finally meet a strategist he could not predict? Because somewhere in deep space, a new war is forming, and it will demand more than phases and diplomacy. It will demand something darker. The first thing Bruce Wayne noticed was the silence. Not Gotham's kind of silence, the heavy, rain-soaked quiet before a gunshot, but a sterile, humming stillness. The kind that vibrated beneath polished metal floors and behind glowing panels of alien technology. His eyes opened to bright white light. Not a cave ceiling, not Wayne Manor, a medical bay. He didn't move. Footsteps approached, calm/measured. Subject's neural activity is stabilizing. A composed voice said. Bruce catalogued the voice instantly. Male, controlled, minimal. Emotional fluctuation. Vulcan. He opened his eyes fully. Above him stood a tall, pointed-eared figure in a blue Starfleet uniform. The insignia was unfamiliar, yet precise in its design. Beyond him, a panoramic window revealed star stars, streaming like frozen diamonds. Warp-capable vessel. Bruce sat up slowly. You are aboard the Federation starship USS Enterprise, the Vulcan said. I am Spock. You are found in an anomalous spatial rupture near the Beta Quadrant. Bruce swung his legs off the biobed. No restraints. Interesting. What year? Bruce asked. Stardate 4523.3. Not Earth standard. Different universe confirmed. How did I get here? Bruce asked, already scanning exits, weapons, tactical vulnerabilities. Spock folded his hands behind his back. Our long-range sensors detected a gravitational disturbance consistent with a micro-wormhole. You emerged from it unconscious. Your attire and physiology are anomalous. Bruce looked down. The batsuit remained intact. No visible tampering. Good. The doors hissed open. Another man entered, confident. You are? Bruce looked at the hand. He didn't take it. Batman. Bruce stepped past him, toward the viewport, staring into the endless void. New galaxy. Unknown powers. Unknown political structures. Opportunity. Threat. Double quotes. What do you know about me? Bruce asked. Spock answered. However, your attire contains advanced polymer layering and compact energy devices far beyond 23rd century Earth design. Bruce's jaw tightened at advance for them. Primitive for him. He turned sharply. You scanned my equipment without consent. Curious. Bruce stepped closer to Kirk, invading his space just enough to test reaction time. Kirk didn't flinch. Interesting. Double quotes. I need information, Bruce said. Political structure. Military capabilities. Known hostile empires. Eyes narrowed slightly. You speak as if preparing for conflict. Bruce's gaze hardened. I assume conflict. Kirk exhaled slowly. Bruce turned toward the stars again. Peace doesn't eliminate predators, he said quietly. It just makes them patient. An urgent voice called through the intercom. Kirk moved instantly. Report. Unidentified. You will remain here. The bridge doors opened to chaos. 3 massive warships shimmered into existence. Angular, predatory, Klingon design. Weapons, charging, shields up. Kurt barked. The first blast struck. The Enterprise shuddered violently. Bruce took in everything at once. Shield frequency oscillations. Weapon recharge timing. Formation spacing. They're testing your defenses, Bruce said calmly. Kirk shot him a look. You familiar with Klingons too? Not yet, Bruce replied. But I understand war. Another blast. Harder this time. Spock worked at his station. Captain, their shield modulation is fluctuating between strikes. Bruce stepped toward the tactical console, ignoring protocol. They're adapting, he said. Your shield harmonics are predictable. Spock's eyebrow lifted. Explain. Bruce's eyes narrowed at the readouts. Rotate shield frequencies randomly, not sequentially. Force them to recalibrate every volley. Kirk hesitated only a fraction of a second. Do it. Spock complied. The next Klingon blast hit then fizzled across the shields with reduced impact. Shield efficiency improved by 17%. Spock reported. Kirk stared at Batman. "You've fought interstellar empires before." Bruce didn't answer. The Klingon ships repositioned to flanking, one drawing direct fire. "They're hurting you," Bruce said. "To where?" Kirk demanded. Bruce looked at the star map. A nearby Nebula. Ion interference, sensor disruption, ambush territory. "They want you blind." The lead Klingon ship suddenly transmitted an open channel. A scarred warrior filled the screen. "This vessel is property of the Klingon Empire. Surrender your technology." And the alien in the bat armor. The bridge went silent. Kirk's jaw tightened. "On what grounds?" The Klingon bared his teeth. "He is not of this universe, and we believe he carries knowledge of weapons that could shift the balance of power." Bruce's eyes darkened. "How did they know?" Spock turned slightly toward him. "Fascinating." The Klingon leaned closer to the screen. "Batman," he growled, "you've already been analyzed. Your tactical mind is legendary. The Empire, who would value such a strategist?" Bruce stepped forward into view. "I don't work for empires." The Klingon smiled coldly. "Then you will die for one." Transmission cut. Kirk turned to Batman. "Care to explain why an alien empire wants you specifically?" Bruce's thoughts raced. If Klingon intelligence already intercepted traces of his presence, this universe's power players would move fast, too fast. He looked at the tactical display. Again, 3 ships, aggressive, pride, driven, predictable, double. "Croats, Captain," Bruce said quietly. "Give me control of your next move." Kirk stared at him. "You're not Starfleet, no," Bruce replied. "But if they think I'm a weapon, let's show them one." Another blast rocked the ship harder than before. Hull integrity dropping. Spock glanced between them. "Captain, logic suggests the human known as Batman has already increased our survival probability." Kirk exhaled. "All right, Dark Knight," he said. "You have the bridge." Bruce stepped forward, hands hovering over alien controls he had never seen before, and yet he understood them, because war is universal. "Helm," he said calmly, "take us into the Nebula." Gasps filled the bridge. "That's exactly what they want." Someone protested. Bruce's voice dropped into something colder. "Not the way I'm going to do it." The Enterprise lunged toward the swirling clouds of ionized gas. Behind them, the Klingon warships followed, and as the stars disappeared into stormy violet mist, Bruce Wayne allowed himself the faintest shadow of a smile. Because in a galaxy built on diplomacy and honor, no one had prepared for fear. What if the Nebula wasn't a trap for the Enterprise, but a battlefield designed for Batman? And what if the Klingons were about to discover that strategy? Not strength decides who survives the storm. The Nebula swallowed them whole. Purple lightning rippled across the view screen as ionized gas scraped against the Enterprise's shields like claws against glass. Sensors flickered. Consoles sparked. A strained vibration that Bruce could feel in his bones. "Visibility at 30%, or I reported. Communications interference rising." "Perfect," Bruce muttered. Kirk glanced sideways. That wasn't reassuring. Behind them, the 3 Klingon warships pierced the mists like sharks scenting blood. Their hulls glowed faintly beneath. The charged particles, disruptors primed. "They're closing," Sulu warned. Bruce's eyes darted across the tactical display. Ion density fluctuations, electrical discharges, magnetic distortions, chaos. Most captains avoided chaos. Bruce weaponized it. "Spock," he said, not looking away from the screen. "Can your sensors isolate ion pockets with the highest conductivity?" Spock's fingers danced across his console. "Affirmative, though precision is limited." "Limited is enough," Bruce replied. Another blast slammed into the shields. This one bled through slightly, rattling the deck. Kirk steadied himself. "Your plan would be good to hear right about now." Bruce turned toward him. "Klingons rely on direct confrontation. They trust strength, honor, predictable dominance." His eyes hardened. "So we remove predictability." He tapped the display, marking 3 glowing clusters within the nebula. "Those ion pockets are unstable. If struck with phased energy at the right frequency, they'll discharge violently." Spock tilted his head. "You intend to transform the nebula itself into a weapon?" Bruce's expression didn't change. "Yes." The lead Klingon vessel fired again, ignoring the subtle tension among Starfleet officers watching a stranger command their battlefield. "Spock, reroute a fraction of shield power into the deflector dish." Kirk blinked. That'll weaken our defenses. Spock's brow creased. Explain the objective. Bruce's gaze sharpened. We overload the deflector to emit a focused energy pulse into the densest iron pocket as we pass through it. Realization flickered across Spock's face. The resulting chain reaction would propagate toward the Klingon formation. Bruce finally looked at him directly. Timing. The Enterprise banked sharply, diving deeper into the storm. Lightning arced across the hull. The ship groaned like a living thing under strain. Behind them, the Klingons followed aggressively. They think we're desperate, Bruce said quietly. Good. Range 15,000 kilometers, Sulu called. Spock's voice remained calm. Deflector modifications complete. Bruce's hand hovered over the control. On my mark II. Now. The deflector dish flared brilliant blue, firing a concentrated pulse into the glowing ion. Cloud ahead. By a heartbeat nothing. Then the nebula ignited. A cascading explosion of electric fury erupted outward, branching like cosmic lightning through the gas. The shockwave tore through space, engulfing the first Klingon warship before its captain could react. On the viewscreen, the vessel's shields flared and shattered under the overload. Its hull split in a violent bloom of fire. The bridge fell. Silent. Direct hit, Euro whispered. The shockwave continued, slamming into the second Klingon ship, crippling its propulsion. The third veered sharply, barely escaping the worst of it. Kirk stared at the destruction. You just turned a cloud into artillery. Bruce didn't respond. Because he wasn't watching the explosions, he was watching the survivor. The third Klingon ship stopped its pursuit, maintaining distance. They're retreating, Sulu said. Spock studied the readings. Negavade, they are recalibrating. Bruce's jaw tightened. They learned. On screen, the surviving Klingon vessel transmitted again. The scarred commander reappeared, his expression no longer mocking. You fight without honor, he growled. Bruce stepped into view. Honor doesn't win wars, he replied evenly. Preparation does. The Klingon's eyes burned. The Empire will remember you, Batman. We will study your methods. That's the problem, Bruce said softly. You won't survive long enough. Before Kirk could question that statement, the Klingon ship suddenly cloaked, vanished. The nebula grew quiet again, crackling softly with residual energy. Did we win? A crewman asked cautiously. Bruce stared at the empty tactical display. No. Kirk folded his arms. Care to elaborate? Bruce turned slowly. They weren't hunting your ship. A chill passed through the bridge. They were confirming my existence. Spock's eyes sharpened. You believe this encounter was reconnaissance? Bruce nodded. The Klingon Empire now knows there's a strategist in Federation space capable of unconventional warfare. Kirk's jaw tightened. That's bad, because empires don't fear weapons, Bruce said. They build bigger ones. Silence settled heavily. The Enterprise eased out of the nebula, stars reappearing in calm, indifferent brilliance. But Bruce felt it. A shift. Somewhere in this galaxy, intelligence networks were activating, data being transmitted. Analysts studying shield modulation patterns, deflector frequencies, battle psychology. His presence had already destabilized the board. Spock approached him quietly. You display remarkable tactical foresight, the Vulcan said. However, your methods prioritize victory over diplomacy. Bruce's gaze drifted to the stars again. In my world, he replied, diplomacy exists because someone in the shadows ensures the monsters are afraid. Kirk studied him carefully. What? Not Gotham, he said. Bruce's voice lowered. No, he agreed. You're not. An alarm suddenly chirped, different this time. Not external. Internal. Double quote, Captain, Yura said, confusion in her voice. We're receiving a priority transmission from Starfleet Command. Kirk moved to the center chair. On screen, the Federation emblem dissolved into the face of an Admiral Stern, unsettled. Captain Kirk, the Admiral began. We have a situation. Bruce stepped back slightly. Listening. Long-range probes near the Romulan neutral zone have detected abnormal fleet mobilizations. Romulans. Spock stiffened almost imperceptibly. The Admiral continued. Intelligence suggests the Empire is sharing tactical data with the Romulan Star Empire. Kirk's eyes narrowed. That's unprecedented. Yes, the Admiral said grimly. And there's more. Intercepted communications referenced a single variable influencing this cooperation. The Admiral's gaze shifted slightly. To quote directly, "They are preparing for the bat." Every eye on the bridge turned to Bruce. The weight of an entire galaxy's suspicion settled in the air. Kirk rose slowly. "Looks like you've made an impression." Bruce didn't smile. He'd seen this before, when criminals stop fighting each other and start aligning against you. Spock's voice cut through the tension. "Fascinating. The mere existence of one strategist has destabilized two empires." Bruce's eyes darkened. "No," he said quietly. "It's just beginning." Far beyond Federation space, inside the shadows of a cloaked Romulan warbird, a figure studied holographic projections of the Nebula battle, freeze frames of shield rotations, deflector bursts, behavioral models. Green eyes gleamed with cold calculation. "A human," the Romulan commander murmured, "who fights like a Romulan." The image zoomed in on Batman's silhouette, standing on the Enterprise bridge. "Fight his weaknesses," the commander ordered softly, because the final frontier had just encountered something new, and the galaxy was adapting. What if the greatest threat to the Federation wasn't the Klingons or the Romulans, but the possibility that Batman himself could tip the balance of the galaxy into endless war? And what if Starfleet began to fear the very man who just saved them? The Enterprise glided through open space, but the air on the bridge felt heavier than the vacuum outside. Bruce stood near the viewport again, silent, calculating. Behind him, the murmur of Starfleet officers carried a subtle shift. Curiosity had turned into caution. Kirk finally broke the silence. "Starfleet wants a full debrief. They're sending orders to redirect us to Starbase 12. Bruce didn't turn around. "They want to evaluate me." Spock folded his hands behind his back. "Your arrival has caused measurable geopolitical instability. Logic dictates assessment." Bruce's reflection stared back at him in the glass, cowl framing a man out of place in a world built on optimism. "In my world," Bruce said quietly, "governments don't evaluate threats. They try to control them." Kirk stood. "Yeah, not a prisoner. Not yet." The turbolift doors opened and closed with mechanical precision as they descended toward the briefing chamber. Every detail was catalogued in Bruce's mind: security patrol routes, phaser placements, response times, not because he planned to attack, because he planned for everything. Inside the briefing room, holographic displays lit up the moment they entered. Federation insignias rotated in mid-air. Data streams scrolled rapidly. Admiral Comac's image flickered into existence above the table. Captain Commander Spock and Batman. Bruce met the hologram's gaze without flinching. "You've reviewed the battle footage," Bruce said calmly. Comac's jaw tightened. "We have. Your tactics were effective." "But," Bruce replied, "but they escalated an already volatile border conflict." The Admiral continued. "Klingon and Romulan channels are unusually active. Intelligence suggests discussions of a temporary alliance." Kirk frowned. "Over one encounter," Spock interjected smoothly. "Not the encounter alone. The psychological variable." Comac nodded. "You represent unpredictability, a wildcard neither empire can model." Bruce stepped closer to the hologram. "That's why they're afraid. And fear," the Admiral said sharply, "breeds preemptive strikes." The room grew quiet. Bruce understood instantly. They weren't afraid of him losing. They were afraid of him winning. "You want me off the board," Bruce said. Comac didn't deny it. "Starfleet does not operate through intimidation or terror tactics." Bruce's voice lowered. "You think I operate through terror?" Spock's tone remained neutral. "Your psychological warfare methods are evident. You weaponize fear. And it works," Bruce replied. Kirk leaned forward. "This isn't Gotham. We don't rule through shadows." Bruce turned toward him, eyes intense. "You don't rule? At all. You negotiate. You explore. You hope." His voice softened, but only slightly. "Hope doesn't stop empires from preparing genocide." Comac cut in. "Enough, Batman. Until we determine your long-term impact on interstellar stability, Starfleet Command requests that you remain under supervision." "Supervision," Bruce repeated. "Observation," Comac corrected. "Containment," Bruce translated. A faint tremor rippled through the ship. Not an attack, a sensor alert. Spock touched his communicator. "Bridge to Commander Spock. Go ahead." Aura's voice answered. Long-range sensors detecting multiple warp signatures emerging near the neutral zone. Configuration suggests joint formation. Kirk's eyes widened. Joint? Yes, Captain replied. Klingon and Romulan vessels. The room went still. Cormac's hologram flickered as subspace interference increased. They're mobilizing faster than predicted. The Admiral muttered. Captain, you are ordered to maintain distance and observe only. Bruce stepped toward the exit. Kirk grabbed his arm. Hold on. You heard the Admiral, Bruce said. They want to observe. Spock's eyes sharpened. Your intention, Bruce's voice was ice. Interception. Cormac's voice boomed through the flickering hologram. That is not authorized. Bruce paused at the door, not looking back. When predators gather, he said quietly, you don't wait to see what they hunt. The doors slid open. Moments later, the bridge was alive. Again alerts flashing, tension rising. On screen A, formation of warships materialized near the neutral zone. Klingon birds of prey flanked sleek Romulan their green holes glinting ominously. They weren't firing, they were assembling. This is unprecedented. Sulu whispered. Kirk sat in the captain's chair. Conflicted. Bruce stood beside the tactical console. They're testing the Federation's response time, Bruce said, seeing if you hesitate. Spock analyzed the formation. Their alignment suggests coordinated maneuver drills. They are sharing tactical data. Kirk exhaled. Over you. Bruce didn't deny it. A transmission request flashed. Romulan frequency. Hurrah reported. On screen, Kirk said. A Romulan commander appeared tall, composed, eyes cold and intelligent. Captain Kirk, she began smoothly. We come not as enemies, but as concerned powers. Bruce stepped into frame intentionally. The Romulan's gaze shifted to him instantly. There he is, she murmured. Kirk crossed his arms. State your concern. You harbor a destabilizing force, the Romulan replied. This individual has already altered combat doctrine across 2 empires. His presence is an act of strategic aggression. Bruce's voice cut through calmly. You're afraid. The Romulan smiled faintly. We are cautious. There's a difference. Behind her, Klingon officers watched with visible hostility. Weaponized chaos, she continued. What happens when you decide the Federation's morality is inefficient? A subtle murmur rippled across the Enterprise bridge. Even Starfleet officers were listening closely. Bruce's silence lingered, just long enough to make the question dangerous. Then he answered, I don't conquer civilizations, he said. I stop them from destroying themselves. The Romulan's eyes narrowed. History suggests otherwise. Your psychological profile indicates a willingness to operate outside conventional ethics. Kirk shot him a look. Bruce ignored it. You're forming an alliance, Bruce said. Temporary, fragile, built on shared fear. The Romulan did not deny it. And what if we are? She asked softly. Bruce stepped closer to the screen. Then you've already lost. The Klingon commander growled. Arrogance. Strategy, Bruce corrected. Spock leaned slightly toward Kirk. Captain, emotional escalation is occurring. The Romulan's composure remained intact, but her eyes sharpened. You believe you can predict us? Bruce's voice dropped. Lower. I don't need to predict you. A beat. I just need you to predict me. Silence. Because that was the trap. If Klingons and Romulans began overanalyzing every Federation maneuver for signs of Batman's influence, they would hesitate. Second, guess, distrust each other. The Romulan understood it. Her gaze hardened. You are attempting to fracture this cooperation. Bruce didn't blink. He built it on fear. It was already fractured. For a moment, the screen flickered with unspoken tension. Then the Romulan commander leaned back. This is not over. Batman, she said quietly. The galaxy does not tolerate singular variables for long. Transmission ended. The combined fleet held position for several more minutes. Then, slowly, ships began to separate. Klingons drifting one direction, Romulans another. The fragile alliance dissolving under its own suspicion. Kirk exhaled. He just bluffed. 2 empires. Jaw tightened. No. He watched the last warbird cloak and vanish. I reminded them they don't trust each other. Spock studied him carefully. Your approach relies heavily on psychological destabilization. Bruce turned slightly. It's cleaner than war. Kirk looked out at the empty stars. 4. Now, but far beyond sensor range, inside the shadow of a Romulan listening post, encrypted transmissions were already being sent. Not to the Klingons, not to the Federation, but deeper, Into space even the Romulans approached cautiously. A single message repeating one word. Batman, and something ancient. Something mechanical. Something watching from the dark between stars. Receded. What if the signal sent in Batman's name didn't reach an empire, but awakened something older than the Federation itself? And what if the greatest detective in the universe had just unknowingly announced himself to a machine that hunts civilizations? The Enterprise had resumed standard patrol speed, but no one on the bridge felt at ease. The neutral zone was quiet. Too quiet. Bruce stood alone in the observation lounge, the curve of space stretching endlessly beyond the glass. He replayed the encounter in his mind, not the words, not the threats, the timing. The Romulan commander had stalled at one specific moment, a fractional delay before responding to his psychological maneuver. She hadn't been thinking about him. She'd been transmitting. Behind him, the door slid open. Spock entered silently. "You are troubled," Spock observed. Bruce didn't turn. Something shifted during that transmission. Spock folded his hands. "Clarify." Bruce's voice was low. "She wasn't just speaking to us. There was subspace interference layered beneath the signal." Spock's brow tightened slightly. "We detected minor fluctuations. They were attributed to Nebula residue." Bruce finally faced him. "They weren't random." Spock stepped closer to the console and began running deeper scans. "Explain your reasoning." Bruce's eyes sharpened. "Predators don't form alliances without leverage. Klingons rely on force. Romulans rely on secrets. If they're cooperating, there's a third variable." Spock's fingers paused over the controls. "A mutual threat," he said quietly. "Or a mutual master," Bruce replied. An alarm chirped, sharp and unfamiliar. Spock's console flashed crimson. "Captain to the bridge," Spock said immediately. Moments later, they stood amid a tense silence. "Report," Kirk demanded. Aura's voice carried unease. "We're detecting a repeating subspace pulse emanating from beyond the Romulan border." Sulu added, "It's not Klingon, not Romulan, not Federation." Bruce stepped forward. "Pattern." Spock enlarged a waveform. "Highly structured, binary oscillation layered with quantum harmonics." Bruce's expression darkened. "Artificial." The pulse repeated again, stronger this time, and then, without warning, every screen on the bridge flickered. The stars vanished, replaced by a grid. Cold, geometric, endless. Voice filled the ship, flat, mechanical, infinite. Biological distinctiveness detected. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Spock's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. "Impossible," the voice continued. "Strategic anomaly identified." Bruce felt it in his spine before he understood it. "Recognition. You've drawn our attention." Kirk stood slowly. "Identify yourself." The grid shimmered. A shape emerged, massive, cubic, metallic. Green conduits pulsing across its surface. Spock's voice lowered. "The Borg." The name hung like a death sentence. Bruce studied the cube's architecture with rapid calculation. Adaptive shielding, modular weapon ports, no aesthetic, pure function. "Resistance is futile," the voice droned. "Batman." The crew turned toward him instinctively. Kirk's voice tightened. "How do they know your name?" Bruce's mind raced backward. Transmission. Subspace layering. The message wasn't political. It was bait. They weren't forming an alliance, Bruce said quietly. They were outsourcing. The Borg cube rotated slowly on screen. "You represent strategic evolution. You will be assimilated." Spock's hands moved across his console rapidly. "Captain, the Borg vessel is adapting its frequency in response to our shield harmonics without being fired upon." Kirk's eyes widened. "They're studying us already." Bruce stepped toward, tactical. "They don't study," he said. "They absorb." The cube surged forward. "Red alert," Kirk shouted. Phasers fired brilliant beams striking the cube's surface. "No visible damage. Shield impact negligible," Spock reported. The Borg voice returned, slightly altered. "Adaptation complete." The cube fired. A single green beam lanced through space, striking the Enterprise's shields. They collapsed instantly. The ship lurched violently. Explosions rippled across the bridge. Bruce grabbed the console, steadying himself as sparks showered. "The deck. Damage report," Kirk barked. "Multiple systems offline. Warp drive fluctuating." Scotty's voice crackled over sim hymns. The Borg voice echoed again. You will add your distinctiveness to our own. Bruce's eyes locked on the cube. They weren't targeting life signs randomly. They were focusing scans on him. Spock's voice cut through. Captain, their sensor concentration is centered on Batman's neural patterns. Kirk turned sharply. They want you specifically. Bruce didn't hesitate. Because I'm unpredictable. The cube advanced again. Another beam tore into the Enterprise, carving into the secondary hull. Hull breach. Alarms screamed. Kirk clenched his fists. Options. Spock's voice was tight, but controlled. Conventional weapons are ineffective. The Borg adapt in real time. Bruce's mind moved faster. Adaptive enemy. Collective intelligence. Centralized hive network. Cut the connection. Spock, Bruce said urgently. Can you isolate their communication frequency? Spock's fingers flew. Their neural network operates through subspace transceivers embedded throughout the vessel. Jam it. Spock hesitated. Interfering with Borg subspace channels has historically proven ineffective. Bruce's gaze hardened. You haven't tried my way. Another impact rocked the ship. Structural integrity dropping fast. Kirk grabbed Bruce's shoulder. If you have a plan, now would be the time. Bruce stared at the cube. They're drawn to evolution, he said quietly. So let's evolve. He turned to Spock. Feed them. Spock blinked. Clarified. Transmit a false neural pattern complex. Erratic, layered with contradictory tactical data. Something no collective can stabilize quickly. Understanding flickered. A cognitive virus, Spock said. Bruce nodded. Make it look like me. Kirk's eyes widened. You want them to assimilate fake strategy? Yes. The Borg voice interrupted. Defiance detected. The cube began, charging a larger weapon energy building along its edges. Spock worked rapidly, injecting fabricated neural matrix into Borg channel. Bruce watched the tactical display as data streamed outward, waves of calculated chaos, encoded in subspace pulses. For a moment, nothing. Then the cube faltered. Its green conduits flickered irregularly. The Borg voice glitched. Strategic input, inconsistent. Paradox, paradox. Bruce exhaled slowly. Collectives struggle with contradiction. He said, the cube's weapon discharge destabilized mid-charge, exploding harmlessly into space. Kirk stared. You're confusing them. For now, Bruce replied. But then, the cube's surface shifted. Panels rearranging. Adapting. Spock's eyes widened slightly. Captain, they're restructuring their neural network. The Borg voice returned calmer, sharper. Adaptation complete. The cube surged forward again. Faster this time. Bruce's heart didn't race, but he understood. He had just escalated. The board beyond empires. The Klingons weren't the threat. The Romulans weren't the threat. He was now the Borg wanted him added to infinity. The cube's tractor beam activated. Locking on to the Enterprise, deck plating groaned under the force. Structural integrity failing. Scotty shouted. The Borg voice echoed one final time across the bridge. Batman will be assimilated. Green light flooded the VIEWPORT. And for the first time since arriving in this universe, Bruce Wayne felt something unfamiliar. Not fear, but consequence. What if the only way to stop the Borg from assimilating the galaxy was for Batman to let himself be taken? And what if the Dark Knight had already decided that sacrifice was the only logical move left? The tractor beam tightened. The Enterprise groaned like a wounded animal as the Borg cube dragged it closer, meter by meter, toward its metallic abyss. Shields are non-functional, Sulu shouted. Warp core destabilizing. Under beam stress, Scotty's voice crackled through. Green light poured across the bridge, reflecting in Bruce's lenses. He didn't resist the pull. He studied it. Frequency modulation, cycling in rhythmic intervals. Power surges, peaking every 4.2 seconds. Micro fluctuations in containment. Strength, there's a gap. Small, but real. Kirk gripped the captain's chair. Options. Now. Spock's voice was measured but urgent. The Borg have adjusted to the false neural matrix. They're isolating Batman's authentic synaptic signature. Bruce's jaw tightened. They're filtering noise. The Borg voice echoed again, colder than before. Individuality will be purged. Strategic anomaly will be integrated. Bruce stepped forward, closer to the viewport, closer to the green beam that shimmered like a cage. They won't stop. he said quietly. Kirk turned to him. We'll fight. Bruce didn't look away from the cube. No, you'll lose. Silence hit harder than the Borg's weapon. Spock's eyes narrowed slightly. Probability analysis, Bruce answered without hesitation. Given their current adaptive rate, 93% chance they board within 5 minutes. 99% chance they adapt to your weapons permanently after that. Kirk stepped closer. Sigh, what are you saying? Bruce finally turned. I'm the variable they want. The realization spread across the bridge. You can't be serious, Kirk said. If they assimilate me, Bruce continued, they'll pause. Spock tilted his head. Explained. They'll prioritize extracting my tactical framework, Bruce said. Analyzing it, integrating it. That buys you time. Time for what? Kirk demanded. To find a way to sever the collective link, Bruce replied, without me complicating their models. Kirk's voice hardened. We don't trade lives. Bruce's eyes sharpened. You already do. Every time you send a crewman into danger. That's different. Why? Bruce shot back. Because I volunteered. Another violent tremor shook the bridge as the tractor beam intensified. Hull breaches flared across secondary decks. The Borg cube loomed larger, filling the entire screen now. Spock spoke quietly. There is logic in his proposal. Kirk turned sharply. Spock. The Borg prioritize uniqueness, Spock continued. Batman's neural architecture presents a strategic complexity unprecedented in their database. Assimilation would demand concentrated processing. Bruce nodded. They'll divert resources. For how long? Kirk asked. Bruce met his gaze evenly. Long enough. The Borg voice cut through again. Prepare for assimilation. Transporter signatures spiked across the ship. Multiple Borg boarding parties materializing on decks 5 and 7. Uhura cried. The decision had run out of time. Bruce moved. He unlatched a small device from his belter. Compact sphere, lined with unfamiliar circuitry. Spock's eyes flickered toward it. That technology is not of this century. It's not of this universe. Bruce corrected. He turned to Kirk. When they take me, don't interfere. That's not an order. You can give, Kirk snapped. It's the only move left, Bruce said calmly. The turbolift doors exploded inward. Borg drones stepped onto the bridge massive. Biomechanical, eyes glowing with cold precision. Phasers fired. Ineffective. The drones adapted mid-strict green, shields flickering around their bodies. They advanced, without urgency, without anger, without fear. One drone stepped directly toward Bruce. Batman, it droned. You will be assimilated. Bruce didn't fight. He didn't step back. He activated the sphere subtly in his palm. A silent pulse rippled outward, undetectable to Federation sensors, but not to the Borg. The drone paused. Unidentified signal. Detected. Bruce leaned closer. That's for later. He whispered. The drone's mechanical arm extended. Nanotubules glistened at its fingertips. Kirk lunged forward. Captain, no, Spock warned. Bruce locked eyes with Kirk one final time. This is strategy, he said. The nanotubules pierced his neck. Pain flashed white-hot. But Bruce didn't cry out. Green light surged around him as transporter beams enveloped his body. The bridge erupted in shouts. Then he was gone. Silence followed. The Borg drones halted their assault instantly. Primary objective acquired. The collective voice echoed across the ship. Boarding parties began dematerializing. The tractor beam loosened. On screen, the cube shifted, slightly redirecting power. Internally, Spock moved to sensors rapidly. Captain, their energy distribution has altered significantly. Kirk clenched his fists. They're focusing on him. Yes, Spock said quietly. Assimilation protocols indicate concentrated neural integration. The cube slowly disengaged, drifting backward, not retreating, recalculating. Moments later, it entered warp, gone. The bridge stood in stunned silence. Kirk stared at the empty stars. He just let them take him. Spock's voice remained composed, but softer. He did not surrender. Captain. Kirk looked at him. He infiltrated. Inside the Borg cube, darkness pulsed with green circuitry. Bruce Wayne knelt on a cold metallic platform, restraints clamping around his limbs. Mechanical arms descended from the ceiling. Needles, implants, conduits. The collective voice surrounded him from every direction. You will be made perfect. Bruce's breathing slowed, deliberately, heart rate controlled, Pain compartmentalized as the first implant drilled into his skull. Streams of data flooded his consciousness, billions of voices, billions of minds, interconnected, endless knowledge, endless strategy, endless war. The Borg began mapping his thoughts, his memories, his contingency plans, and then they reached the walls, mental barriers, constructed over decades, disciplined, layered, armored. The collective hesitated. Resistance detected. Bruce's internal voice was calm. "You want my mind? You'll have to survive it." Deep within his cowl's inner lining, the device he had activated on the bridge began transmitting, not outward, inward, a self-evolving algorithm directly into Borg subspace frequencies. Not chaos this time, a pattern, one designed for infiltration, for fragmentation, for doubt. The collective absorbed him, but Bruce Wayne was already inside them, and for the first time in their vast, merciless existence, the Borg felt something unfamiliar. Uncertainty. What if the Borg didn't break Batman, but Batman began breaking the Borg from the inside? And what happens when a hive mind encounters a will it cannot dissolve? Darkness pulsed with green light. Bruce Wayne hung suspended in a chamber of metal and shadow. Cables threaded into his spine, skull, bloodstream. Nanoprobes coursed through him like liquid ice, rewriting tissue, mapping neurons, translating thought into data. Pain was irrelevant. He had trained for pain. The real battlefield was quieter. Inside his mind, the noise began. Billions of voices, layered into a single, endless current. "We are the Borg. You will be assimilated. Your distinctiveness will be added to our own." Bruce felt them pressing inward, cataloging memories, deconstructing trauma, analyzing combat simulations, decoding fear patterns. They expected panic. They encountered architecture. Mental firewalls unfolded like steel doors slamming shut. Labyrinthine corridors of thought redirected invasive probes into dead ends. False memories triggered. Phantom contingencies activated. The collective adjusted. Subject displays advanced cognitive compartmentalization. "Of course I do," Bruce thought. "You're not the first hive I've faced." He felt them probing deeper. His childhood, the alley, the gunshot echoed that forged him. He let them see that. He let them analyze the grief. But every time they tried to extrapolate weakness from it, they found something else. Discipline, purpose, control. Within the cube's central processing nexus, green conduits flickered as data streams spiked unpredictably. Strategic modeling unstable. The Borg attempted to integrate his tactical framework's risk assessment trees, probability branches, multi-layered deception matrices, but Bruce had never designed his strategies to be copied. They were designed to be adaptive, self-evolving. Even he didn't reuse them the same way twice. And now the algorithm he had seeded began to bloom. It threaded through Borg subspace channels, embedding within communication relays. Not a virus that destroyed, one that questioned. Tiny contradictions inserted into shared conclusions. Minor statistical deviations amplified. If threat probability equals 72%, reassess. If assimilation yields improvement, verify. If unity ensures perfection, you'll define perfection. The collective faltered not in chaos, but in hesitation. On the Enterprise bridge, Spock monitored fluctuating readings. "Captain," he said quietly, "the Borg cube's energy output is oscillating." Kirk leaned forward, meaning. "They are diverting processing capacity internally at an unprecedented scale." Kirk's eyes sharpened. "He's doing something." Inside the cube, Bruce felt them push harder. Nanoprobes surged again, reinforcing neural links. Green light flared across his vision as the collective attempted full synchronization. "You will comply." Bruce's internal voice remained steady. "No." He shifted mental posture, opening a narrow channel intentionally, letting them in. The Borg flooded into the corridor he allowed, and found something waiting. A scenario. A fully constructed simulation of interstellar war Klingons betraying Romulans mid-battle. Federation deploying asymmetric countermeasures. Borg cubes trapped inside, collapsing singularities triggered by miscalculated probability models. No, the collective absorbed it instantly. Ran it, analyzed outcomes, contradictions multiplied. Outcome variance exceeding tolerance, Bruce amplified it. He fed them layered simulations, each slightly altered, each dependent on trust between drones, each collapsing when one unit questioned another's timing. Because that was the flaw. Unity without trust is fragile. The Borg had unity. They did not have trust. They had obedience. And obedience fails when doubt enters the system. Within the cube, a drone paused mid-step. Processing lag, 0.004 seconds. Another drone recalibrated a plasma conduit incorrectly. A micro-delay, insignificant alone, exponential together. The collective recalculated. External interference detected. They attempted to isolate Bruce's neural feed, but by then, his algorithm had propagated across multiple nodes. You can't remove what you've already shared, Bruce thought. The chamber around him trembled slightly. Across the cube's surface, shield harmonics fluctuated. On the Enterprise, Spock's eyes widened. Captain, their adaptive shielding is Kirk stood there, vulnerable. For the first time since initial contact, Spock confirmed. Kirk didn't hesitate. Full impulse. Keep distance. We're not attacking yet. He looked at the cube on screen. We wait. Inside the collective, the voices grew sharper. Individual thought increasing. Deviation detected. Recalibrating consensus. Bruce felt pressure intensify like gravity crushing inward. They were trying to compress him into uniformity. To drown the doubt, nanoprobes injected another surge. Vision blurred. Muscles stiffened. For a fraction of a second, the voices aligned again, overpowering. You are alone. You cannot resist infinity. Bruce's heartbeat slowed deliberately. Alone. He opened another mental door. Images flooded outward. Not simulations. Memories. Alfred's steady voice. Commissioner Gordon's quiet faith. The Justice League standing together against impossible odds. Humanity's resilience. Individuality as strength. The Borg absorbed it. Processed it. But something unexpected occurred. The collective experienced fragmentation, not physical, conceptual. Why preserve individuality and memory if unity is superior? Why does subject associate strength with autonomy? Why does probability modeling increase when variables remain independent? Questions. Questions were inefficient. Questions were dangerous. Across the cube, drones paused longer. Now 0.02 seconds. Energy flow spiked erratically. The central nexus attempted emergency override, purge anomaly. They focused entirely on Bruce's consciousness. Everything else dimmed. Shields, weapons, external scans, all secondary. Assimilate the anomaly. Bruce felt the pressure, peak like a star about to collapse. Good, he thought. Focus on me. On the Enterprise. Spock spoke urgently. Captain, the Borg cube's external defenses have dropped to 41% efficiency. Kirk's eyes burned. He did it. Spock's voice remained measured. Temporarily, Kirk stepped toward. Tactical. Lock phasers butt hold. Inside the cube, Bruce's body convulsed as assimilation reached maximum intensity. Mechanical implants locked into place along his temples. The collective attempted full override, and then a ripple passed through the network. A drone in engineering hesitated. Another in weapons recalculated, targeting unnecessarily. A third began processing an independent probability path without consensus approval. Non-collective thought emerging. The words echoed in the shared consciousness like heresy. Bruce felt it crack. Small, but real. The Borg were not designed for doubt, and doubt had just entered infinity. The cube shuddered visibly in space. On the Enterprise view screen, green lights flickered chaotically. Spock's voice carried something rare. A cascade failure is beginning. Kirk stared at the trembling monolith. But at what cost? Inside the assimilation chamber, Bruce's vision darkened at the edges. The collective's last unified surge pushed against his mind. You will be assimilated. Bruce's internal voice, though strained, remained iron. No. Green light flared violently, and for the first time in recorded history, a Borg cube screamed. What if the scream wasn't the Borg dying, but the Borg evolving? And what if, in trying to fracture the collective, Batman had just created something far more dangerous than unity? The scream wasn't a sound in space, it was a rupture in certainty. Across the cube's surface, green conduits flashed erratically as entire processing nodes went offline. Drones froze mid-motion, some collapsed. Others turned their heads not in synchronized precision, but in something disturbingly independent. Inside the central chamber, Bruce dropped to one knee as restraints loosened unpredictably. The mechanical arms that held him twitched, unsure of command priority. The collective voice fractured. We Borg. The pause between words stretched too long. Bruce forced himself upright, despite the weight of implants embedded in his skull. Nanoprobes still surged through his bloodstream, but their coordination lagged. He felt it clearly now. Not silence, noise, individual threads of thought flickering where there should have been one. You don't break a hive by destroying it, Bruce thought. You break it by making it think. But something shifted in the data flow around him faster than anticipated. The algorithm he seeded had done more than introduce doubt. It had introduced self-preservation. Within the Borg network, drones rerouted commands locally instead of globally. Unity wasn't dissolving, it was reorganizing. Spock's voice cut across the Enterprise bridge. "Captain, internal energy spikes across the Borg vessel are stabilizing." Kirk frowned. "Stabilizing? Yes, but not returning to baseline. They're restructuring." On screen, the cube's chaotic flicker began smoothing into a new patternless uniform, but more focused. Sections of the hull glowed independently, like different minds occupying different quadrants. "They're adapting to the Tao," Kirk said quietly. Spock nodded once. "It appears Batman's interference has forced them to decentralize." Kirk's jaw tightened. "Isn't that worse?" Inside the cube, Bruce felt the answer before anyone could say it. The pressure in his mind shifted from overwhelming unity to concentrated precision. The collective voice returned, but different. Not a chorus. A single tone layered over many. "Strategic anomaly acknowledged." Bruce steadied himself. "Correction," the voice continued. "Assimilation model revised. The restraints reactivated stronger this time, but not mindless. Targeted. They're isolating me," Bruce realized. Rather than flooding his mind with infinity, the Borg was segmenting him into a contained processing node, studying him without risking total network contamination. Smart. Too smart. The implants along his temples pulsed with focused energy. "Individuality may enhance collective survival," the voice stated calmly. Bruce's eyes narrowed. That wasn't submission. That was evolution. On the Enterprise, Spock's readings sharpened. "Captain, their neural network is no longer singular. It resembles layered subcollectives, operating semi-autonomously." Kirk exhaled slowly. He forced them to evolve. Spock's tone was neutral, but the implication was heavy. Indeed. Inside the chamber, Bruce felt the new structure forming around him. Isolated processing hubs, communicating through controlled gateways instead of full integration. They were building firewalls against him. The Borg voice spoke again, clearer than before. "Batman, your distinctiveness increases efficiency when contained." Bruce almost smiled despite the pain. "Containment is temporary. We adapt. So do I." The chamber doors slid open. 2 drones entered, but they moved differently now. Their steps weren't perfectly synchronized. Microvariations in posture, subcollective units. They approached him with surgical precision rather than blind force. "You will assist evolution," the Borg voice declared. Bruce's thoughts accelerated. If they perfected decentralization, they would eliminate their greatest weakness. Doubt would no longer fracture them. It would refine them. He had forced the Borg to innovate. An innovation in a machine species was catastrophic. On the Enterprise, Ura gasped softly. "Captain, the cube is powering weapons again." Kirk's eyes widened. "Already?" "Yes," Spock confirmed. "But output signatures differ. More concentrated, less waste." The cube rotated toward the Enterprise with unsettling smoothness. Inside, Bruce understood the new strategy instantly. They weren't trying to overwhelm anymore. They were targeting specific systems, precise strikes, strategic dismantling. They had learned restraint. The Borg voice resonated within him. "Your methodology is efficient. We will integrate selective individuality." Bruce's heart pounded once hard. That was the nightmare. Not a unified Borg, a thinking Borg. He activated the final phase of his internal algorithm, something he had reserved for last resort. A contingency embedded deep within the cognitive virus. Self-sacrifice protocol. The implants in his skull began feeding a new signal, not doubt this time. Fear. Raw. Unfiltered. Biological fear. He let the Borg feel it fully. The alley. The gunshot. The helplessness. Not compartmentalized. Not controlled. Overwhelming. Because fear spreads faster than logic. Subcollectives processed it independently. And without perfect synchronization, emotional data hit them differently. One node classified it as weakness. Another classified it as caution. Another interpreted it as threat. Contradictions re-emerged, but now, between sub-collectives, consensus, deviation, increasing, the Borg voice stated, strained. On the Enterprise, Spock leaned forward. Captain, their power grid is fluctuating again. Kirk didn't hesitate. Target their central processing hub. One volley, maximum yield. Phasers charged. Inside the cube, Bruce felt the sub-collectives begin arguing, not verbally, but through delayed command confirmations. For the first time, a drone near him stepped back instead of forward. Hesitation. Kirk's voice echoed on the Enterprise bridge. Fire. A concentrated phaser blast tore through space, striking the cube at the precise node Spock had identified. The impact wasn't explosive. It was surgical. The section housing the central nexus erupted in cascading failures. Inside, the chamber lights flickered violently. The Borg voice fractured again. We are Borg. The statement lacked conviction. Bruce tore one arm free as the restraints weakened. Not anymore, he whispered. But as the cube began to drift, systems failing across multiple sectors, something unexpected occurred. Escape pods, small, angular Borg vessels began launching from different quadrants. Spock's eyes widened slightly. Captain, they are dispersing. Kirk stared at the screen. They're fragmenting. Inside the chamber, the floor tilted as gravity disgravitized. Bruce staggered but remained upright. The Borg voice echoed faintly now, but no longer unified. Evolutionary continues. The chamber ruptured, atmosphere venting violently into space. Emergency containment fields flickered. Bruce grabbed onto exposed conduit wiring as the cube tore itself apart from internal division. He had broken the hive, but he had also seeded something new. Fragments of the Borg no longer fully unified, no longer perfectly collective, escaping into the galaxy. Independent, adaptive, strategic. Outside, the cube split along structural seams, sections detonating in silent green bursts. The Enterprise pulled back as debris scattered across space, and amid the chaos, one small escape vessel veered off at high warp, its trajectory unknown. On the bridge, Kirk whispered, "Did we win?" Spock watched the scattering signatures carefully. Defined victory. Inside the collapsing cube, Bruce spotted a functioning transporter alcove, flickering weakly. He forced himself toward it, implants sparking. Behind him, drones lay inert, staring at each other in silent confusion. He activated the transporter manually. Coordinates, USS Enterprise. As green light enveloped him, the cube imploded in a silent cascade of dying energy. Moments later, Bruce materialized on the Enterprise transporter pad, collapsing to one knee as medical teams rushed forward. Kirk arrived seconds later, staring down at him. "He just fractured the Borg," he said quietly. Bruce looked up, exhausted but conscious. "No," he corrected. "I changed them." Spock entered the transporter room. Captain, long-range scans confirm multiple Borg fragments escaping in divergent vectors. Kirk's expression darkened. "So instead of one collective, several evolving factions," Spock finished. Bruce forced himself to stand despite the pain. "Good." Both men looked at him. "Division makes them vulnerable," Bruce said. "They'll compete, distrust, adapt differently." Kirk studied him carefully. "And if one adapts better than the rest?" Bruce's eyes lifted toward the stars beyond the viewport. "Then we adapt faster." But far across the quadrant, inside one escaping Borg vessel, a small cluster of drones processed new directives, no longer bound by perfect unity, no longer blind to fear. One of them spoke not in monotone, but with subtle inflection. Strategic individuality, viable. Green light flickered, and a new kind of Borg was born. What if Batman's fight against the Borg didn't end with victory, but with the birth of a new, unpredictable force in the galaxy? And what if the very strategy that saved the Federation also seeded a threat no one could anticipate? The USS Enterprise floated in silence, the stars stretching endlessly beyond the viewport. The bridge was quiet, save for the soft hum of damaged systems returning to stability. The crew exchanged glances, uncertain if relief or dread should come first. Kirk's hands gripped the edge of the command chair. "All right, status report." Spock spoke calmly, though his eyes betrayed the weight of analysis. "The Borg cube has been destroyed, or at least fragmented. Multiple escape vectors have been detected, each carrying independent clusters of drones. Their internal systems indicate emergent strategic thinking. They are evolving." "Bruce," leaning against the nearest console, wiped a streak of blood from his temple. His voice was quiet, but every word carried weight. Not evolving toward assimilation, evolving toward competition. Kirk turned sharply. Competition, you mean? They'll fight each other. Yes, Bruce said, straightening despite his exhaustion. By introducing doubt, fear, and unpredictability into their hive mind, I forced them to fragment their priorities. They will analyze, test, and sometimes even oppose one another. Bruce's gaze hardened. Decentralization is both a weakness and a weapon. They will learn faster, yes, but they will also make mistakes. And I've seeded those mistakes. I've ensured that no two clusters will ever think exactly alike. Kirk's jaw tightened. So we just hope they destroy themselves before coming after us. Bruce didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned toward the viewport, watching the distant quadrant where green lights flickered like sparks in the void. Hope isn't part of the plan, he said finally. Observation is. We monitor, predict, intervene when necessary. The galaxy just got a new set of variables. Variables it didn't have before, and one of them is me. Aura's voice broke the tension. Captain, sensors are detecting another warp signature. It's small, fast. Could be one of the Borg fragments you mentioned. Kirk's expression darkened, but Bruce remained calm. Let it pass for now. We don't need to react to every threat immediately. The point is not to destroy them yet. The point is control, influence. Watch them make decisions that reveal their strategies, weaknesses, and instincts. That is how you stay ahead. Spock tilted his head. Your methods, while unconventional, have created a precedent. The Borg now operates under new parameters. They will observe, adapt, and evolve unpredictably. The galaxy is no longer dealing with a monolithic entity, but multiple intelligent factions. Bruce stepped closer to the tactical display, his hand tracing the paths of the escaping drones. The lesson they will learn, he said quietly, is that fear is real, that uncertainty is deadly, that one variable, one prepared, patient, adaptive mind can change the course of infinite events. Kirk finally looked at him directly. And if one of those variables turns against us, Bruce's eyes were cold and resolute, then we adapt faster, always faster. That's the difference between survival and extinction. The Enterprise continued its course through the stars, systems slowly stabilizing. Bruce's eyes never left the viewport, watching the faint green traces of the Borg fragments drifting into the unknown. Somewhere, out there, new empires of calculation and strategy were forming, each one a potential threat, each one a puzzle, and he would be ready. In the silence, Spock's voice spoke softly, almost to himself. Remarkable. One individual has not merely survived the Borg, he has rewritten their evolution. Bruce turned, his cowl casting a shadow over his expression. Evolution isn't guaranteed, he said. It's earned, and I've made sure they'll earn it the hard way. The stars stretched infinitely ahead. The galaxy was no longer the same. Every empire, every fleet, every faction would now account for a new kind of predator, one that thrived in shadows, exploited uncertainty, and always stayed 3 moves ahead. Kirk exhaled, a mix of awe and unease. So, what now? Bruce's eyes were fixed on the void, where fragments of the Borg would evolve and collide in unpredictable ways. Now, he said quietly, we prepare, because the galaxy just learned that strategy can be a weapon greater than firepower. And with that, the Enterprise continued into the final frontier, its crew forever changed, and the dark night of Gotham now a silent, calculating force among the stars. The galaxy would never forget the name Batman, the echoes of a fractured Borg, the lessons of fear, doubt, and strategy would ripple through the stars, forever altering the balance of power in ways no one yet understood. The universe had changed, and one man had ensured it would never be the same again. The end.